What's up, Taiwan? I'm Brossard with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's economy is having its worst year for growth since the financial crisis. The government predicts the economy will grow by just over 1.4% in 2023, the lowest since 2009. Business boomed in 2021 as demand for Taiwan's electronics surged, but since then growth has slowed. Officials blame high global inflation and geopolitical tensions. For more on Taiwan's slow economic growth, our reporter Stash Butler spoke to economist Alicia Garcia-Herrero.
Officials in Taiwan are pinning the blame for slow growth on things outside the country, like global inflation. So that kind of begs the question, how much of what happens to Taiwan's economy is actually in the government's control?
It is quite true that a lot of what's happening is the semiconductor cycle, which has been unfavorable for a year and a half at least. But there's also this idea that I think Taiwan needs to find new sectors, not only the semiconductor sector. So if they had diversified the economy before, they wouldn't need to blame the external environment. In other words,
has the government done enough to diversify?
I don't think they have. An industry that they could actually have started developed during COVID, the tourism industry. We don't know whether, global manufacturing is going to shrink, as many think, because of the digitalization globally. So what about services? What about tourism? What about digital services as well? Not only hardware. So I think these are things that Taiwan has to start thinking about.
How much will officials in Taiwan be looking at, some of the economic worries coming out of China and worrying about the effect that will have on the economy here?
So, we know China is going to continue to decelerate slightly. But of course, it affects Taiwan because Taiwan is still so dependent on exports into the mainland. Because we know this is structural, that China will continue to slow down. I think Taiwan needs to find other sources of growth in the southbound strategy, kind of rethink it, foster it further. India, I think all of these high growth places in the surroundings of Taiwan should be the aim of their trade policy.
That was Alicia Garcia-Herrero, chief economist for the Asia Pacific at Nataxis, speaking to Stash Butler. The average mortgage term for a new home in Taiwan has hit a record high. Taiwan's housing is some of the most expensive in the world relative to incomes. With prices growing faster than wages, home buyers are taking out loans with longer repayment periods. The average mortgage term for the third quarter was 25 years and 4 months, up for a full year from a year earlier. Taiwan's military is showing off its new jet trainer while getting ready to say goodbye to its oldest aircraft. Jaime Okan reports from eastern Taiwan.
Taiwan says farewell to one of its oldest fighter jets. For almost 50 years, these American-made F-5s, also known as Tigers, were used to not only defend the skies above Taiwan, but also to train the country's fighter pilots.
说要换装，其实对我而言，只是换一个地方，然后飞不一样的飞机。那准备跟学习的方式，其实都是一样的，努力付出。
But this goodbye marks a new era for Taiwan's Air Force. Replacing the F-5 are these new domestically made advanced jet trainers. They're unique in that they use a state-of-the-art simulator to help pilots get a feel for the variety of jets Taiwan has in service.
With the advanced, flight control and all that heads-up display, it's easier for us to simulate like a real enemy and to have our training.
The jet trainer, or Brave Eagle as it's nicknamed, it's part of Taiwan's efforts to modernize its military. And because they're locally made, Taiwan is able to not only cut costs, but also boost its domestic defense industry. This Air Force base in Taidong is home to one of the country's largest training facilities. And it's also going to be home to 66 of these brand new jet trainers. Now, the military hopes that these new aircraft and the technology that's inside them will help better train its Air Force pilots. Taiwan's Air Force is under immense pressure as it scrambles regularly to intercept Chinese warplanes flying near the country. Part of the decision to retire the F-5 was due to safety concerns, as the military has been dealing with a string of recent accidents, losing several aircraft and pilots in the past 3 years. That's why analysts say the move to retire the F-5 is the right decision.
台湾的 F5 其实并没有跟其他国家一样有做一个 upgrade， 也就是它的 jet 那个弹射椅没有升级，所以一旦出现飞行员操作失误或者是机械故障的话， 飞行员可能就比较没有这个逃生的机会。
On top of the modernization efforts, Taiwan also hopes the new aircraft can help solve a pilot shortage. New recruits that have already flown the jet trainer say it's much easier to handle the craft, something that should benefit a strained force. But regardless of the difficulty, trainees like this one are committed to doing whatever it takes to get ready for the worst.
We are trying to be 100% ready if there is any possible war.
All 66 of the Brave Eagle jet trainers are set to be delivered by 2026. And for young pilots like Kai, the next step is making the transition from a jet trainer to a fully armed fighter jet. Joseph Wu and Jaime Okan in Taidong for TaiwanPlus.
More than 100 Taiwanese soldiers will travel to the U.S. next year to be trained on Abrams tanks and HIMARS rocket systems. Taiwan bought the U.S.-made weapons for about $2 billion to better equip its military against the invasion threat from China. Deliveries have been delayed by the war in Ukraine, but they are set to begin next year. Taiwan is investigating 2 people over Chinese interference in upcoming elections. A Taiwanese man and woman are suspected of organizing Beijing-funded trips to China, attended by around 130 people. Prosecutors say the group met with Chinese officials and that they were urged to vote for opposition candidates in Taiwan's January race. The pair face charges of breaking Taiwan's anti-infiltration law. They've been released on bail. Taiwan has seen 2 more accidents at construction sites in the past 24 hours, one of them fatal. They're the latest in a string of mishaps, putting a spotlight on Taiwan's workplace safety culture and its failure to enforce safety rules. John Van Trieste has this story.
By the time firefighters got here, it was too late. A cave-in at this construction site in the southern city of Kaohsiung buried a worker alive on Tuesday. All that was left to do was to dig the body out. It took the firefighters an hour. After reviewing security camera footage from the site, officials figured out what had happened. This, it turns out, was not a freak accident.
初步调查呢是发现雇主在从事露天开挖作业时没有依法设置挡土支撑，这部分违反了职业安全卫生法第6条第1项规定。
Officials have ordered work to stop and promised to prosecute those responsible. But the maximum fine the company can face is less than $10,000. And this wasn't the only construction mishap that day caused by workplace safety failures. A crane collapse just outside Taipei injured its operator. Officials are still investigating the cause, but they say they'll fine the construction firm up to $3,000 for failing to install proper equipment. Poor safety at construction sites is a recurring problem. This year, improper practices and violations of the law have toppled apartment blocks in Taipei and sent a crane tumbling 30 stories in the central city of Taichung, hitting a passing metro car and killing 1 person. Officials say that while these incidents involve different violations of different laws and so aren't directly related, more can be done to ensure safety. And they say more is being done right now.
像我们也会参考一些国外，尤其日本这一块，我们也跟他进行合作，其实协协。然后最近我们会进行更进一步的一个探讨，他一个有没有更也要我们法规里来做一个精进的一个作为，我们会吸取他们的一些经验来做我们的修正。
But in the end, only Taiwan's government can solve Taiwan's problems. And how well it can put what it learns from overseas into practice will be a matter of life or death. Howard Zhang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
All 41 workers have been rescued after being trapped in a collapsed tunnel in northern India for over 2 weeks. They left the tunnel one by one via a steel pipe after a fraught 17-day rescue operation. The workers have been taken to hospital for medical care. Construction crews had been working inside the tunnel in a landslide-prone area when it collapsed on November 12th. The UN's annual climate summit is kicking off this week, and cutting fossil fuels is a top priority. But with the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's biggest oil producers, playing host, some doubt progress will be made. Sally Jensen has more.
Preparing to tackle what's been called humanity's biggest challenge. The UAE's Sultan Al Jaber will be welcoming representatives from over 200 countries to Dubai for the United Nations 28th Annual Climate Change Summit. Al-Jaber has been a controversial choice to preside over this year's COP28 gathering, as he's also the chief executive of the state-run oil company, one of the largest oil producers in the world.
I want everyone to know that we have the full political will to support a successful COP28.
But many parties to the conference remain doubtful. At the top of the agenda for the two-week summit, phasing out fossil fuels like coal, gas and oil, the main cause of the climate crisis, and fast-tracking the move to clean energy, which Al-Jaber says he is well placed to push for, as he's also the chairman of the UAE's state-owned renewable energy firm. Just days before the summit opening, though, increased skepticism. The BBC reported that leaked documents showed the host nation planned to use the summit to further energy deals with other countries. Allegations not denied by the UAE, which said that, quote, private meetings are private.
Nobody has any commitment to phasing out fossil fuels, which is causing the vast majority of our climate crisis. And that's exactly why they should not be allowed into these conferences, and we need a very clean slate for actual negotiations to happen.
And with parties needing to make decisions unanimously, there are concerns that COP28 may not achieve what it sets out to, with countries bringing their own economic interests to the table, a problem which has previously delayed a loss and damage fund, which would funnel money from rich countries to poorer ones more vulnerable to climate disasters. If they still can't reach a consensus in Dubai, it could jeopardize the goals for global action.
Nunca foi tão urgente retomar e ampliar essa cooperação. Os desafios da nossa era e as oportunidades que surgem demandam ação conjunta.
Adding to the urgency is that 2023 is set to be the planet's hottest year on record. To turn the needle on the climate crisis, countries will need to drastically cut their emissions, and these talks will be the first assessment of progress since the landmark Paris Climate Treaty, signed by nearly 200 countries in 2015. And if progress fails to match what's needed, it could spell further catastrophe for the planet. Scott Huang and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
British airline Virgin-Atlantic has completed the world's first long-haul commercial flight using only so-called sustainable aviation fuel. The flight took off from London and landed in New York, carrying the airline's founder, Richard Branson. Carriers are looking to move away from conventional jet fuel to cut carbon emissions, but the actual sustainability of these fuels is still an open question. They're also expensive, and the materials to make them are in short supply. Virgin's CEO says he's still optimistic.
The feedstock in this case was just oils coming from either animal fat or cooking oil, used cooking oil. But that's just the first generation. So this is really a pathway to showing how to decarbonize long-haul aviation.
Taiwan Cement Corporation is planning to heavily increase its investment in low-carbon cement. The company says it will invest nearly $850 million to become the majority stakeholder of both Oyak Cement in Turkey and Simpor Cement in Portugal. This will put Taiwan Cement on track to become one of the world's leading suppliers of low-carbon cement. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at these dragon boat races in the Cambodian capital of Phnom Penh. They're back for the first time since the COVID pandemic. I'm Philip Brossard. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Standing Strong, every Thursday, 10 a.m. on Taiwan